The price for a single family home in Calgary is now below $750,000. That is down 1% from last year, $5,700 from last month, and almost $20,000 from the peak prices that we saw in March of this year. Now, are we going to drop down to those $550,000 price points that we saw pre-pandemic? I doubt it. Let me explain. My name is Adam Fyfe, your Calgary real estate agent. I like to try to provide as much value as possible. I'm going to try to bang through this as quick as possible. There's links in the description that are free for you to do. If you want to schedule a Zoom call, do you want to know what your home is valued at? Do you want to know what recent homes in your neighborhood sold for? Do you want to know what's going on in your community in terms of the stats? Well, go ahead and click on the community pricing here, and this is going to take you to a Google Drive folder that I've created for you. You want to understand what the actual attributes are for each individual price point that we talk about, the benchmark price? Go ahead and click that link as well. So, like I said, lots of value for you to consume. It's free to do. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Detached homes. Sales in September slowed to 859 units, 9% lower than last year and below long-term trends for September. At the same time, new listings rose to almost 2,000 units, causing the sales to new listing ratio to fall to 45%, levels not seen since 2018. While there has been an unexpected shift in September, it is too early to tell if the trends will continue, as prior to this month, the detached market has remained relatively balanced. Improved supply choices is causing prices to decline relative to record high prices reports during the spring. I'm just fumbling all through this. As of September, unadjusted benchmark price was $750,000, down near 1% from both last month and last year. While prices have eased from peak levels across all districts, the largest decline occurred in Northeast and East districts at over 6%. Despite recent adjustments on the year-to-date basis, prices remain nearly 2% higher than last year's level, with the city center reporting the highest gains at over 4%. Okay. I'm very sorry for that. I trip over these. It's a problem with doing this all in one take, but hopefully that made sense, or maybe you're going to skip to that next chapter and that's okay as well. The market in the detached segment has been relatively balanced, now inching towards buyer territory, which is fairly common for this time of year. Typically, September, October, we see a bump in activity, we see the demographic change, and then we see a pretty dramatic slowdown October, November, December, January. Sometimes we see a kick in February, March, depending on the weather. But let's dive into this a little bit more. So this is the breakdown for total sales across the city for single family homes in Calgary. You can see that we've actually had a pretty steady decline down in price point, right? Last year, very common thing that we see every single year. Like I said, we see a price decline. But what happened is in the beginning of the year, we actually saw a pretty rapid increase in price point. It looked like the market was going to be pretty busy throughout 2025. Things changed, things happened. Market started to shift. We saw a flat line for 3 months there. Now we're seeing a steady decline going down. I wouldn't even call it that quick, right? It's a pretty easy pullback, right? You're losing about 1% to 2% every single month, looking around $5,000, right? Obviously, it's going to stay consistent throughout the winter. You can see the inventory has stayed relatively flat, somewhat balanced, and you can see that we've had a decrease in sales. Again, happens almost every year. Typically, you see that big punch in upwards trend, stampede hits, summer hits, things start to slow down. The difference that we're seeing now is over the last 5 years, we've been in an ultra hot seller's market. Now we're going into more balanced territory, especially for the detached segment. Okay, so when we look at this, right, the sales, okay, this is just gonna hopefully paint a picture for everyone. These are year-to-date sales numbers, right? So this year, 2025, we've seen around 9,000 sales, right? Rounding up. And you can see that the benchmark price was $749,000. Last year, we had our peak, right? For the year-to-date, right? In September, it was 757, not the peak, but it was high. And you can see that 690, 626, 555, 505, 505, 511, 524, 510. Hindsight is always 2020. I saw a meme the other day. If you could time travel back to like 2006, what would you do? And it was basically stating that I would buy a house with my lunch money. So hindsight's always 2022. Now what we have to do is wait and stay persistent and looking at the data and making sure you know what's going to happen next, right? We have a lot of interesting things coming up in 2026, 2027. I think Alberta is pretty well positioned, but let's start to dive into this a little bit more. You can see that the sales have dipped, right? We had a crazy amount of newcomers come to Alberta in general, Calgary mainly, and they bought up a lot of our real estate, right? It quickly jumped from 505 to 555. And then again, it jumped $75,000 in 12 months. Same amount of sales, but you can see the price point increase dramatically. Now, when we look at the price point of the sales, right, you can see that it's very few and far between anything under $500,000 these days, right? Even last year, it started to dip down quite a bit, under 500 sales in September. Okay, this is just the month of September. You can see in 2022, 2023, there was just a huge amount of sub $500,000 sales. Obviously, prices have increased, really driving those price points up. Right? You can still see the upper end luxury market is still staying relatively healthy compared to what we saw last year and the year before, but the more affordable segments are noticing pretty rapid declines in sales numbers. Okay? Now, new listings, right? 2021, 2022, I brought this up many of times where we had quite a bit of new listings come to the market, but there were so many new buyers, so many newcomers coming here, investing into Calgary, moving to Calgary, buying their primary residence, that it offset that. Now we're noticing a increase in new listings compared to the ultra low amount of listings that we saw. Sales numbers did slow, but there wasn't enough inventory, allowing us to have 2 months of supply for a lot of the 2023, 2024 hot spring markets, causing the price point to continue to increase. Now we're noticing a slowdown. There are still people coming here. We're still leading the charge in terms of migration, but we're noticing a lot more new listings come to the market and quite a bit less of the sales. So basic economics, probably going to see a slowdown in terms of price. Now, Adam, you don't talk about expired listings. Now I do. This is really interesting. It's a little bit to digest at first, but you can see here in the month of September, we had 293 expired listings, right? So we're only looking at the detached market, and you can see if we just go all the way across, right? It's numbers that we have seen in the past, but it is inching up rather quickly, okay? Like it has before, but it will be interesting to see. So give me some time. I got to digest this myself, right? You can see 2020, we had a fairly consistent year of 200, almost 300, over 350 expired listings. This does not count for withdrawn. This does not count for terminated. This is just expired, to my understanding. Again, I need to dive into this and figure it out, but we will watch this because I know a lot of people are interested in the delinquency rates, the expired rates, and all these other things that just don't get covered from the main report that I talk about, but I will start to look at these things more frequently. So in the month of September, 293, the highest that we've seen in the last 5 years, really, in the end of the day, because you can see the last time we saw that was in late 2020. Okay, again, give me some time. I got to digest that. So with that in mind, the market's slowing down. It's pretty obvious. We actually broke through a threshold here. Now we're up to 4 months of supply for the months of September for the detached market. Surprising to me, to be honest with you. We kind of hit that ceiling for a little while. The market was really holding its own. Now we're starting to notice that slowdown. I would imagine it's going to continue going into the winter months of 2025, 2026. The next big question is, well, how the market will react in 2026, right? The spring market. Is the drop in interest rates going to be enough to spur up more activity in the Calgary real estate market? Or are we going to crash? Are we going to burn? It's fascinating to hear and read all the comments of just the naysayers of what they are hoping to see in this market, right? So with that in mind, here's the same information that we've looked at before, just a numerical value. This is the biggest one that I want to look at here is the days on market. So this is 38 days. The slowest that we've seen in a while, obviously in like November, December, we typically see these numbers. Again, last year, super hot sellers market. Now we're starting to inch up to those higher days on market a little bit quicker. And again, new chart here, we're looking at the past, like, what is this, 20 years, 19 years of how fast it took to sell homes. Again, give me some time to digest this because I need to learn it myself. But you can see it's not completely out of the norm, right? We look at 2008, 2009, right? We look at 2015 to 2020, basically. It's not out of the norm for us to see this type of days on market. A lot of people who are new to this are only looking at what we've seen in the past 3 to 4 years, right? We need to obviously put that in perspective because everything that we're going to see is going to slow down fairly quickly compared to those ultra hot sellers market. And I hope it does. Balanced market is the best market, but it will be interesting to see just how high up we go in the days on market. You see in 2022, we almost peaked 50, right? Are we going to go past this 2022 sellers market, 2022? Are we still going to go past that in the winter months? Interesting to see. We'll now keep track of that. So with that in mind, months of supply. So this is a really good for you to understand for quadrants, how fast those quadrants are moving, right? Anything under 3 months of supply is going to be a seller's market. 3 to 4.5, 5 is more of a balanced market, over 5 buyer's market, right? So if we're looking at apartments here, you can see there's quite a few quadrants already in buyer's market territory, where detached, semi-detached, and even row are all within those balanced market territories, okay? We shouldn't see a whole lot of dramatic movement in those territories. Obviously, coming out of an aggressive seller's market, even being in a balanced market, you're gonna see year-over-year losses. But are we going to see those year-over-year losses dip down crazy, 20% losses? Not in a balanced market. We'll probably see some softening, maybe a little bit of a pullback correction. We're not gonna see a crash in balanced market territory. If it stays at 3 to 4 months of supply for the next 2 years, we're probably gonna see some softening in the market, trying to find that equilibrium, but we're not gonna see those crashes, right? If you look at the apartment sectors in Northwest, Northeast, and East Calgary, yeah, sure, we might see some 10, 15% price declines, especially over last year. Like I've done in the beginning slide, I've obviously put those peak prices. So we're gonna look at those specific price point drops for the entire city. If you want to know what your quadrant, or sorry, what your neighborhood and your property type is doing, that's where you book a Zoom call and have that conversation with me. If you're not looking to have, if you're not looking to make a sale or purchase, that's fine. Still reach out and ask your questions, right? I'm here to help. That's what I do, okay? So with all that being said, we're in balanced territory. You can see that South, East, and West are in the hottest balanced market at 3 months, where you're looking at everything else is basically hovering around 4 months of supply. Cool, cool. Now let's continue on here. Price points, again, you're seeing some decreases. Calgary Real Estate Board, if you're watching this, I don't know why you have these backwards, right? You got East, Northeast on the right side. Why would they be on the left side here? Change that up for me, please. But you can see that we are seeing some price declines across most or all quadrants. You can see that, again, Northwest and West flatlined, right? Small increments of increase compared to last year, where city centers 1%, Southwest, right? Seeing 1%, not really big movement here. Now, how does that affect you, right? If you want to know what your neighbors are selling for, if you have interest in knowing what's going on in your community, reach out. It's free for you to use. It's easy. It's a website that I've created. If you want to know what your home is valued at, see how much you've profited and lost compared to some of the ups and downs, especially if you're an investor, go ahead, scan the QR code, go into the AI tool. Myself and my partner are going to reach out. We're going to say, hi, what's going on? How can we help you? Christian, heck of a guy, super easy going. Let's just have a conversation at the end of the day, okay? So let's dive into this, right? This is the individual quadrants of Calgary. The next step from here would actually be go into your community and figure out what is happening in your local area, right? So if we just go by subdivision here, we're looking at sold prices in Calgary. This is where you're going to get the absolute best amount of information. This is just sold information. We can look at active, pending, terminated, all that jazz. But here's some sold information, some sales, some new listings. The sales new listing ratio has dropped fairly dramatically actually over the last 6 months, right? Again, going from that ultra hot sellers market, even in 2025 to such a fast slowdown going throughout the summer. We're at 45% sales new listings ratio. You can see even Northwest, right? One of the more sought after areas to be in Calgary is only seeing 38% sales and listing ratio, 86 sales out of 225 new listings. So you sellers out there, you need to make sure that you're pricing it accordingly. You need to make sure that you're having a strategy going into this. You buyers out there, homes still sell quick. If you are in the market, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's great to wait that first weekend or that second weekend to see if it's gonna sell or not. But if it's a good home that's priced well, it still moves fast, right? Even though it's a 4 month of supply, it's a balanced market. Good homes, good neighborhoods at good prices that have good marketing do sell quickly. So if you're in the market, just be prepared to make those decisions. And if you are a seller getting into the market, just make sure that you have a strategy going into this, okay? So you can see the benchmark price for those areas. Again, if you're interested in what those attributes are, just make sure to go here, go to benchmark, or sorry, the detached here, and then you can actually see the individual quadrants. But that's that. Year-over-year price points, you can see some communities like we just mentioned are up from last year, city center, Northwest and West, but month over month, a little bit of a different story, right? You can see city center as an example, $9,600 loss previous month, $6,400 this month. Again, North, $6,800 last month, $55 this month. You can even see South, an interesting one, just because it is, oh no, I think I got that confused with something else. You can see it's a $5,100 and a $11,000 loss in the benchmark attributes. A couple of really great sales happened in South Calgary, pulling those attributes down quite aggressively. So congratulations to those buyers out there that got that. And I feel bad for you sellers, depending on what the situation was. So let's go on. Now, Like I've said before, right? We are in the negative territory, but it doesn't look like we're dropping too quickly here. You can see that we have somewhat slowed down in the year-over-year loss, meaning the price declines from last year and the price declines from this year are on the same trajectory, right? It's not like we're seeing some massive drops every single month in year-over-year losses. We are sticking around that 1 to 2%. So is this a crash? No. Is this a pullback? Yeah, absolutely. We're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown in the market here. You can see that, again, we're talking about this trend line here of last year and this year. Even though this year had a kick, it will be interesting to see what happens in 2026. We might get a little bit of a kickoff in the year, but we're dropping at a very similar pace right now. It's not dramatically falling. Like I said, good homes that are priced well do sell quickly. So it was time, right, for Calgary to see some sort of slowdown. We go back all the way to 2026, where homes were to 400,000 for whatever the benchmark attributes were at that time. I would assume that they're the same. I'd have to, again, learn this chart so I can digest and articulate it to you. I would like to think it's the same attributes, but I'm not sure yet. But you can see that, we had some slow growth going up to $600,000, right? Very steady growth from 2006 to 21. Then we just absolutely had a tear throughout 2021 to 5. Now we're starting to see a slowdown. I don't foresee Calgary going through any sort of crash scenario. I'm sorry for all of you out there that are hoping to see that. I just personally think Alberta is too well situated in our economics, if you would, just for lack of whatever words I can think of in my head. But our economy is still doing relatively well. We still have people moving here. I highly doubt the Liberal government is going to want to see housing crash in Canada. They're going to somehow pump more money into the housing market to not allow that to happen. It's my personal opinion. I could be wrong, but that's my thoughts. Yeah, we're probably going to see a slow and steady pullback. We might get into correction territory in some areas, but again, there's a time variance on that. If it takes us, 4 years to get to that 10% loss, that was a nice steady pullback for 4 years. It was a balanced market for 4 years, right? If we're starting to see those 20% losses, that's a pretty big deal. And that's something that we're going to probably chat about one day if it does happen. So thank you very much. If you have any questions at all, I hope this made sense to you. I hope this wasn't that long. I will start to dive into more details. I promise you I'm going to come up with more content about Alberta and talking about how we are positioned and how confident I am in the long-term plan of this province and this city. So thank you very much. Try not to beat up me too hard in the comments, but see you on the next one. Peace.